Hi everyone, it's Vicky here and today I'll be making an art journal page for Limor Weber Designs. Notice that I've skipped one page and I'll be working on the next one. I'm going to cut out strips of paper from the pages that I'm working on. So I'm using my metal ruler there and I'm cutting out about 1/4 of an inch from each side. Now I'm struggling to do that and finally I found out that it's always easier if you first fold the paper and then try to cut it out as I did here. I'm doing this technique because I'll be framing my layout today somehow different than I usually do, and you see what I mean later on. I also love this technique because it leaves the edges a bit rough. Hope you can see that. So I'll continue doing that and now you can see the final result. I'm going now to cover up both pages with gesso. I've shared a video about gesso and what it does, and you can always find more info on my blog. So I'm using gesso by Faber-Castell, which is nice and thin, and I'm just covering up both pages. Once I've applied gesso, I went ahead and used my heat gun, just because I'm not too patient with drying time. Now everything is dry and I'll go ahead and use my gelatos. I'll be using tons of gelatos today, but for my background I've picked up 3 shades of blue. I'm sharing all the supplies that I'm using on my layout on my blog as well as on the Limor Weber Designs blog, and you can find both links just below the video if you are watching on YouTube. So I continue to apply gelatos. They are nice and soft and you can apply them super easy. Remember that I have gesso on my pages now, and once all the color is on the page I can go ahead and use my finger to blend the colors. You can always help your fingers do the job if you have a wet baby wipe close by, which can always moist your finger. Now I'll go ahead and seal down gelatos. There are a lot of different ways to seal them down, but I prefer using gel medium on top rather than a spray, just because I'm too lazy to go outside and spray it out. So I'm using gel medium, and if you do that, just make sure that your brush is totally dry. So now I'll go ahead and add some interest on my background. I'm using just a script stamp there with my pit brush marker. This is a marker by Faber-Castell and it dries permanent, so it will stay nice on my page, and no matter what I do on the top, it will not move the ink from that marker. To add a bit of dimension, I'll be using this stencil by Tim Holtz, and it's called Raise, which is also available by Limor Weber. All the supplies I'm using today are available from the shop. It works just like modeling paste or embossing paste, and I'm using my spatula to apply it all over my page. And as my page is drying, I'll be using some pattern paper to create a house. So I've just chosen one of my pattern papers that I had on my stash, and with a pencil I'm drawing a whimsical house. Now I'll use my scissors to cut around it, and then I'll use another pattern paper to create the roof. To stick the house on my page, I'm using gel medium, and also notice that once I'm sticking everything down, I also apply gel medium on top of the pattern paper. I'm doing that just because I want to turn it into a non-porous surface, and this will help me out later on when I'll be doing my shading using the paintbrush markers. You see what I mean in a bit. For doors and windows, I'm using this old book page, and I'm just drawing a few of them, which I'm going to cut out using my scissors and then stick them down. My page isn't dry yet, so I still have some gel medium on top of the house, and I can stick everything down. I'm going to use my brush and go over the top of the windows and the door with gel medium to make them non-porous as well. I have cut out that part of the video where I'm applying the gel medium because it's obvious, and now let's move on to the part where I'm shading. So I'm using my paintbrush markers and I'm going all over. Notice that I use just a bit darker shade of color than my paper, and I'm just smudging everything with my finger. Now paintbrush markers are permanent, but they give you just a few seconds to move the ink before they dry, and once they dry they become permanent. So I'm also using dark blue for shading at the background. All the shading that I'm doing will help the house to become a part of the page, and it actually brings everything together. And it's always helpful to have a wet baby wipe close by so you can erase any mistakes that you do just before the ink is dry. But remember, you have to move fast, because if that ink dries, it will stay there forever. And again, I'm linking all the supplies that I'm using on this video on the blog, so make sure to follow the links just below the video if you're watching on YouTube. And here comes my favorite big brush. This is Caput Mortuum. It's number 169 from the Pitt Artist Pens, and I think that once you add the brown, everything really comes together. So I'm using now my scissors to cut out the excess from the house, and I can now go ahead and add details using my black pen there. This is a pen by Faber-Castell, and it really writes on top of gel medium. Just make sure that gel medium is totally dry, or it will clog your markers. So now I'm adding lines here and there. I'm not making a continuous nice line. I like my lines to be sketchy. And my house is ready. I'm using this stencil, which is by Finnabair, and it's from Prima. I'm going to create some circles here and there, which I'm going to color them using gesso. I'm doing that because I want to use my gelatos later on and create some flowers, and just because I already have a background that is blue, my colors won't show as nice as I want to. So I'm making sure that I have a white background for my paint to stick. And now we can follow along as I'll be coloring my flowers. I'll be using gelatos and create some blendings and shadings on the flowers. So I'm using for each flower I'll be using two colors. For this one I'm using yellow, that's lemon actually, and orange. And notice how I use a different finger to blend a different color. Remember that I'm working on a non-porous surface, and that's very helpful. If you make a mistake and you want to erase something, just use a wet baby wipe. Just like I'm doing here. I'll go all over the flower and make sure it's nice and clean. And now, just because the house wasn't too vibrant like my flowers, I went over it with yellow and orange, as well as the red one on the roof, and I made it just a bit more vibrant than it was. That's leaf green by big brush markers by Faber-Castell, and I'm using that marker to create the stems. To add more interest on the stems, I'll go over them with my black pen, which is the one I've used on the house. That's by Faber-Castell again. I also covered all the flowers with gel medium. I did that because I've used gelatos, and the gelatos are not permanent, so you need to seal them down somehow if you are going to add more layers. And since there is a non-porous surface, I can now go ahead and add some shading, just like I did on the house. I've also used heart punch to cut out a few tiny little hearts. I've actually used the same pattern paper that I've used for the roof of the house. And now I'll use my gel medium and just stick those hearts as if they are coming out of the chimney. And now it's time to work on the edges of my page. So to make it look more distressed, I'm cutting out some slits on the edges and just curling the paper in. So you'll see me adding texture on the edges just like that, and curling and turning everything out. And this is part of today's technique for a different idea on framing your art journal layout. Remember that the pages I'm working on are slightly smaller than the rest of the pages on my notebook. If you want to create the same look and you find that your pages are too heavy to do that, you can always moisture your page just by spraying it with water. It will make the job so much easier. And once I'm happy with the edges, I can now go ahead and use my chalkboard paint. This is a paint by Faber-Castell and it's totally black, and I love the matte finish that it gives, which is actually replicates the chalkboard. And I'll go over the edges of the next page, as you can see here. So just because the page that I'm working on is slightly smaller than the next page, it will create a border. And once everything is dry, you can see the result here. I did the same thing on the previous and the next page of my layout, and I can now go ahead and use gel medium in the middle of the pages and just stick them together. Notice that I'm not sticking down the edges of my layout just because I want to keep that dimensional look on the edges. I really loved the outcome of this technique that I came up with, and I think I'll be using it a lot in my future layouts. I just love the outcome. This is a spray by Lindy Stamp Gang, and it's from the Limora Weber Design Collection, and that's actually the Bonjour Butter color, and I'm using this color to cover up all the edges that show from the back of my paper. I just want to cover up the white background there. And now it's time to stamp my quote by using black ink. One thing I love about this page is the vibrant colors, as well as how the black border and the black wording brings everything together. Now I'm using my black pen and add some dots here and there, and now I'm using my Signo Uniball white gel pen to add some details and highlights on the hearts as well as on the house and the flower. And here is one thing I love to do when I'm using big black bold letters, is to use my gel pen and add just a line of highlight on the left side of the letters. I think that brings them more to life. And also I'm using my white big brush marker to add highlights on bigger areas, just like the flowers. And that was my layout for today. I hope you had fun and got inspired. And if you did, don't forget to leave me a comment as well as give me thumbs up on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching.